Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching the Disruptive Investing News Show. I wanted to start with Zeekr.
I know that it sounds like a sneaker company, but it's not. We've been following Zeekr over on the Patreon Investor Club. If you'd like to join us and support our work, you can head over there at patreon.com/9 and sign up.
So we do Investor Club bonus stories every week. We have an amazing Slack for our hundreds of members, and we have live streams with founders and CEOs. You should check it out if you're serious about investing, because remember, investing for serious returns takes work.
Okay, so back to Zeekr. Zeekr is currently a subsidiary brand of the Chinese company Geely Holding Group.
Geely is China's largest privately held automotive group. And by private, I don't mean that it's like one family owns it. I mean that the Chinese government doesn't own it.
So it's not a public company in the communism sense.
Right. It's a publicly traded company, but China doesn't own it.
And again, the reason we say that is because all of these auto companies are at least partly owned by the Chinese government.
Yeah. I mean, look at that list there. I mean, some of the big Chinese companies are actually either partly or wholly owned by China. So Zeekr Intelligent Technology, that's its full name, was started by Geely in 2021 as an EV-only auto brand. Remember that Geely also owns Volvo Cars and Polestar. And Zeekr's CEO, An Congui, has 5 key goals to be completed this year.
One task is to launch 2 new EV models, the first of which is the Zeekr X SUV.
Another goal is to launch Zeekr into some European markets.
Another goal was to complete a Series A funding round, and it appears Congui is good at checking things off his list.
Yeah, Zeekr is currently raising $750 million from 5 investors. Professor Amnon Shashua, which is the founder and CEO of Mobileye, Yuxu Industrial Fund, Tongshang Fund, Jianan Intelligent Manufacturing Fund, and Contemporary Amperex Technologies Limited, which is better known as CATL, the battery brand.
Zeekr already is using CATL Quilin batteries in its Zeekr 009 MPV, which started deliveries in January.
So this Series A will push Zeekr's valuation to $13 billion, up from $10 billion. And if you've been following us on Now You Know's Investor Club, you know that Zeekr filed quietly for a possible U.S. IPO with a $10 billion valuation.
With Zeekr now being valued at $13 billion, this means that if Zeekr does IPO in the U.S., they should be able to raise even more capital.
So my conjecture is that if they IPO in the U.S., then they see the value of moving quickly into building and manufacturing here in the U.S. to get those sweet federal subsidies, EV incentives that last only until 2032. So they better move quickly to build those factories.
Or maybe buy factories that dying auto companies sell.
I think that's actually really smart. I mean, you remember Tesla did that, right? They bought the NUMMI factory in Fremont, cheaper than building their own, and they started their whole car company from there. There's probably going to be a lot of manufacturing companies that aren't going to make it, and this could be a good way to quickly get into the market rather than having to wait the 2 or 3 years it takes to build the factory and then fill it up with robots. Here, you just buy a factory. It's pretty much already made for one thing, right? Making cars, and you just have to kind of outfit it. And Rivian did the same thing by buying that Mitsubishi plant in Normal, Illinois. So Zeekr's plans for Europe are impressive for such a young company, although young may be misleading since Geely is such an established auto company, and this is basically a subsidiary of a big company.
Zeekr sold 70,000 cars last year in China, and their plan is to sell 140,000 EVs in Europe this year.
Now, that's a big second year to have, right?
Yeah.
Most companies can't ramp up that fast. So will the 3 Zeekr models that we now know about, the Zeekr 009 MPV, which has 510 miles or 822 kilometers of range.
Hold on. That's not real range. That's CLTC test cycle range, which is the new, somehow worse Asian range test. The real world range will probably be more like 400 miles, which is still impressive, but that's because it has a huge 116 kilowatt hour battery pack. Then there's the Zeekr 001, which is now being sold in China with a 140 kilowatt hour battery pack and 641 miles or 1,032 kilometers of CLTC range. So again, not real range. 15-inch central screen and up to 536 horsepower and a top speed of 124 miles an hour. The 001 should be coming to Europe this year. We don't know anything about pricing yet in Europe, but in China, it starts at $43,500, which is amazing for a 140 kilowatt hour battery pack.
Yeah, I got to imagine that the homologation, which is like this, safety and all that in Europe is harder. And with the shipping and the taxes, I've got to believe we're talking more like a $60,000 car starting price in Europe. but it remains to be seen.
Still for that range.
And then the X, which stands for Infinite Exploration. We should learn more about the specs at the Shanghai Auto Show in April, where they're going to show that. So here's the question. Do these cars have what it takes to compete with Tesla and others in Europe and then in the US? Because if they do, we could be looking at a repeat of what Japan did in the 80s here in the US, right? Where they introduced Toyota and Nissan and Datsun and all these, Honda, all these brands that Americans had never heard of, but now are kind of, most of those are still household names.
So, let us know what you think down in the comments below. I mean, the range is good.
Yeah.
We don't know anything else.
I want to know so much about these cars. Yeah. I want to know about the autopilot. I want to know about the quality of the drive, all those things.
Software.
Yeah.
The touch screen, because it's not just about the driving. I know that a lot of people seem to think, oh, well, a car needs to drive well, or it needs to, have one thing that people care about, like safety. And I think that I am interested to know about how the safety is going to work too.
Here's the big advantage I think Zeekr might have over a lot of the European and even American car companies, other than Tesla. They have the batteries. So as a lot of these companies come out with, we've got a great car. It's like, yeah, but you have so few of them because you can't fill them up with batteries fast enough that it's like, well, who cares if no one can get their hands on them? Case in point, the Ford F-150 Lightning. Great truck. We have one, but it's like sold out for 3 years. So if Zeekr can come along and be like, yeah, but we can keep selling them, then as you're sitting on the sidelines going, but I'm waiting for that car. But then there's a Zeekr over here that's available now. You might just buy it.
And I think that that's kind of the magic show that all these car companies are trying to pull, where they're like, we have all these models. And it's like, models don't mean because Tesla has 4 models and
soon to be 5.
They're the best selling EVs in the world.
Can you say, well, actually they have the Semi, so it's kind of like they already have 5. And then the Cybertruck will be 6.
Technically, maybe.
And technically, they already had the Roadster 1.
They've been selling 4 models. Those are what's it's all about. It's a numbers game, not the number of models.
Yeah, I want
the number of cars you freaking sell.
I want to go to the looks though of the 009. Is that like a new style thing that everyone's going to love soon, or is that just a very Chinese looking style that people in Europe are not going to love? Because I don't like it, but I mean, I don't know if I'm the right person to go for.
I don't hate it.
It looks so
I mean, it's got that kind of boxy. It looks okay. Just go with me here. Looks kind of like a Rolls Royce and kind of like a Range Rover. Like, okay. I don't know why it looks so British and yet very Chinese, but like that's kind of the look I'm getting from this thing. I don't know if it's gonna. I don't know.
It's just so interesting because I think that the Zeekr X SUV is pretty stylish. Like that seems to fit in well with like all the lineups of cars that I see. But like this one just, I don't know, that grille just stands out so much. I don't know. Comment below. Like let us know what you think, because obviously the looks have to work. The design has to work. But yeah, I'm keeping my eye on this because I think if the IPO does come to the US and if by then we've had a chance to drive in a Zeekr and we like the car, it could be that this is a competitor to Tesla just for the mere fact that they probably will be able to actually come out with enough of them because they have the batteries. But counterpoint, when they come to the US, they will probably not have the $7,500 tax credit, which is going to put them at a huge disadvantage. Now, Europe, which that seems like is where they're focusing, they might have given up on the US. Like this move might be showing that, hey, you know what? We can't get into the US fast enough. Let's just focus on Europe. Europe is the second biggest car market after China. So they might be smart to just say like, you know what? Let's lose on America, but win here in China and win here in Europe.
And it might actually help transition into the United States if they have decent sales and if they sell decent cars in Europe. I know that the cultural exchange between Europe and the United States isn't perfect when it comes to cars. But, you know, if they get on some episode of Top Gear or whatever Jeremy Clarkson is doing, I don't know, maybe, and he says something witty and British about it, then maybe
and let's not forget that Zeekr is not alone. It's not its own little startup. It is basically Geely, and Geely already knows how to buy up smart car companies. They bought Volvo cars, and basically they started Polestar, and those are very European centric brands. Like they take the best of the Europe, like the designers and stuff. And so I don't know. I'm pretty interested in this company. I don't know enough about it yet, but I think as things start to unfold, we're going to get to know more. Comment down below what you think, because I'm really interested in your comments, especially if you get to drive one of these. If you're one of the first people to like own one of these in Europe or something, that'd be really cool.
Or if you've been to China and you've ridden in one or seen one.
Yeah.
And if you have any pictures or video, send them over to hello@nowyouknowchannel.com. Thank you so much for joining us today on Disruptive Investing News. We'll see you next week. Disruptive Investing.
Is that our sign off?
I don't know. Help us with a sign off. What's a good sign off?